Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors coming to you with a rebound relationship series titled Understanding Relationship Failure 10 Reasons. This is going to be a collective lecture, and it is divided into multiple videos. So you will need to listen to the first part, the second, the third, and so on. So, understanding relationship failure is important because if you don't take the time to self assess what went wrong with the relationship, you are doomed to repeat the same types of mistakes. Understanding relationship failure also points to the fact that most relationships fail oftentimes with our contribution, but it could also be that you just really chose the wrong person, or the person was just not ready to be in relationship, or the person could have chosen you as maybe a fallback plan until they were able to marry someone else. So I want you to take some time to listen to the full series. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and I will respond. Also, take some time to hit the subscription button and then hit the notification bell if you are interested in further videos. Thank you for visiting the channel. So this lecture is subject to fair use. So I will be commenting, criticizing, teaching, and pursuing scholarship using this lecture. So reason number 9, procrastination, avoidance of normative standards. To begin a discussion about procrastination, especially how it relates to why someone chooses to marry someone else, is to begin first with understanding the role of problems, and by extension why people avoid problems in terms of resolving them. Understanding why people avoid resolving problems, or at least beginning to recognize and call problems what they are, will help us to understand why people employ procrastination as an obstacle. As one ages, problem solving becomes difficult or more focused on those resolutions that are truly helpful as opposed to those that might be useful. So that word employ there is important not to gloss over, because when you procrastinate, you are essentially putting procrastination to work. You will fund your procrastination. You will nurture it. You will remind yourself to procrastinate. You will clock in, clock out, or procrastinate, clocking in, clocking out. You are essentially employing. You are the employer of your procrastination. So what happens with people when it comes to the role of problems is that they have rolled over in their procrastination until the problem no longer affects them on a higher level. There are no real true consequences, because if there were true consequences for your procrastination, you wouldn't do it. I remember a time where I got a 60 on my academic paper. Now, it was an elective class, but the teacher said that there were late points, deducted if you submitted your paper late. And so I procrastinated because I used to be the queen of procrastination in college, even wrote an essay on it. But on this particular assignment, I procrastinated and I turned in the paper late. So when she returned the paper to me, the professor, it was 100 minus 40 equals 60. And to this day, and that was years ago, I mean many years ago, but even to this day I still cannot get over that 40-point deduction, especially with the idea that I worked so hard on that paper. Of course I procrastinated it too, but I worked so hard on that paper and everything, and I thought it should be at least give it to me, passing. But somehow, for some reason, I just, even to this day, and I've been out of school for a long time now, I just cannot get over that. I made peace with it and everything. I've graduated from college, but somehow I just can't let that go. Well, the funny thing is, I now use that 40-point strategy with my students. And it's a deterrence. It's trying to keep you from turning in the paper late. And they always want to sort of plead their case. Yeah, but I worked hard on this paper. You don't understand. And only to get 60? Yeah, because there is a 40-point deduction. You have a lot of time to write this paper. We go over it in class. You write the paper in parts. So you're not surprised when the paper is due. And for many students, it is a deterrence. But there's always that one or two who want to sort of argue you down. And I'm not going to argue back and forth with you. I've already made a decision about it. But they're going to argue you down and say, no, that's not fair. That's not this, right? Well, that 40-point deduction, while I was in college, I was never late ever again. Never. I'm not saying I got, full A's on a paper or, full A's in my classes, but I promise you I was never late ever again just because of that 40 points. So now I'm not saying that I stopped, procrastinating. I still struggled with procrastination, waiting, to the very last minute to write a paper. And then crying all night, talking about how I had all that time to write the paper, and now I got to write it the night before, and, this is unfair, and it's a conspiracy against me, all that kind of stupid stuff. But there did come a time when when I had procrastinated so much and too much, to the point that I sort of broke down crying and said, I can't do this anymore. Because when you procrastinate, you miss out on the process, you don't progress, and you lose a lot of opportunities. I lost a lot of opportunities with scholarships, any type of fellowship, anything that could have been especially a financial benefit to me while I was in college. So then, had I not learned what I needed to learn during that process, and what helped me to learn was a particular scripture in Ecclesiastes, and I don't have it with me right now, but it's basically, don't wait for perfect conditions. You will never get anything done. If a farmer waited for every cloud, he would never harvest. So every time he goes out, he looks at, it looks like it's going to rain, so I better not sow a seed, right? Okay, if he continues to say that over and over and over again, he would never harvest any crop. Okay, so I did learn from procrastination based upon that scripture, based upon me having sort of like a breakthrough, break down the breakthrough. And I started to work on my procrastinating to the point that when I got to my master's degree, I had worked so much on my thesis, on my master's thesis in parts, that I was able to finish it a semester before my graduating semester. And most people tend to wait to the semester that they graduate to finish it. No, I finished it a whole semester, So I had really progressed in a sense, right? I began to endure the process of getting my workout, and then I progressed in my understanding about how important it is, to get your workout. What happens with people in this last, in the third bullet point here, as one ages, problem solving becomes difficult or more focused on those resolutions that are truly helpful as opposed to those that might be useful. So you then, at a certain age, you're looking for something that's just, that's actually going to help you right now, not something that could actually be useful for you long term, because you have turned yourself over in procrastination so long that you don't have the habit of working out and working through problems. So now you just pick something. If you use romantic relationships as a target discussion, you just pick whoever you think at your 50, 60-year-old self who can help you. But that person might not be useful to you long term. And you can do it in your 20s, your 30s, or 40s, that you may pick a person who is helpful in terms of that person also has a job. You both can be, financially stable, but you might be the dreamer in the partnership. And instead of going after the dream, the partner that you choose says, what's wrong with having a job? Just keep the job. So that person is not really useful to you. They're helpful, right? But they're not useful, because the dreams in your heart have to manifest. And if they don't, they'll turn into maybe a toxic, feeling that you have. You will be more hostile in your relationship with your partner. So it's important to work through your problems and understand the role of the role of procrastination in your life, because as you get older, you tend not to be or not to take too many risks, because now it's basically time to retire, and you don't want to not have a house, not have income coming in, right? And you might choose a partner who thinks the same way, even if your mind and your heart wants to choose entrepreneurship, take a risk, leave that job that you've had for 10, 15, 20 years, and go out on your own. So you could easily choose somebody who might be helpful versus useful. Decision making for older adults, for example, is faster because decisions must be made regarding health, illnesses, medical treatment, and overall wellness. So these authors suggest that middle-aged adults, by contrast, often utilize a wait-and-see approach in favor of gathering more facts, even when a health problem is serious. Middle-aged adults are afforded some time and space to make decisions gradually. However, cognitive processing declines in late adulthood. Older adults' memory limitations make it hard to keep all relevant facts in mind when dealing with a complex hypothetical problem. Older people compensate, on the other hand, by tapping into their knowledge bases regarding past strategies. So sometimes middle-aged adults, they tend to make, they can also make hasty decisions, even if they still have the time and space to make decisions gradually. They are still likely to get into stuff, before their time as well. But the difference between the middle-aged adult and the late adult is that the late adult has a knowledge base of skills and strategies that they have adopted from their early adulthood, middle adulthood, right before their late adulthood. So they're likely not to get into projects too hastily. That does not mean that they won't take a risk in their late adulthood and take on a project. It's just that they understand now that there's a process to everything, and that there's a season to everything, and there's a time to everything. You still have late adulthood people and elderly people who are running races, training for marathons, leaving their job. They have a pretty good pension, thrift savings plan. They, cash out and then go into business for themselves and things like that, that you can still do that. It's not necessarily hasty in that regard as long as you have a good plan. But the difference between, say, the early adult, middle adult, and late adulthood person is that there is a knowledge base of skill development, strategy development, relationship development that they can pull from. The late adulthood person can pull from and build on top of. Whereas even though the middle adult age will wait and see approach and make a decision gradually, you still see them also procrastinating as well as getting into projects too quickly, and they end up having to ask money from the late adulthood parent or elderly parent to help them to continue along their way. In all respects, as you get older, you tend to care more about your health. You tend to care more about the illnesses, right? You want access to medical care, and you want overall wellness, both psychological and mental, and then of course financial and economic. It is the expertise that older adults reflect upon in solving problems during this stage in their lifespans. Middle-aged adults often encounter real-world practical problem-solving opportunities in which the task requires analyzing the problem and determining the best strategy for how best to achieve a goal that also comes with uncertainty. It is the expertise, an extensive, highly organized, and integrated knowledge base that can be used to support a high level of performance that aids in helping people resolve problems. Thus, expertise is developed over the lifespan from early adulthood to midlife. So when you procrastinate, you procrastinate the development of knowledge and skill and talent and other types of development, where the older adult by a certain age in their lifespan, as well as the elderly adult, have expertise. They offer expertise. That's why it's strange that we don't regard them, that they have already walked out the problem that you are going through. They have at least 20, 30 years on you of failing and getting back up and crying and learning. And we tend to sort of move them off to the side and say they don't know what they're talking about when they actually do. It's the middle-aged adult, like I said, will often encounter practical problem-solving opportunities, but they are also the types of people who get into things that might be uncertain. A lot of people in their 40s are still acting like they are in their 20s. We got away with a lot in our 20s. We can get into stuff. We can fall down and heal quickly. If you fall down now in your 40s and 50s, rest assured, it might take a while for you to heal. But that expertise is important, because the more you don't tap into, or the more you fail to collect knowledge and learn from knowledge, learn from mistakes, you won't have that skill development or strategy development once you get older and you encounter other types of problems. If you start off regarding, say, like a particular problem, like here it is, you need antibiotics, right? And people oftentimes don't regard antibiotics as something that they need to take to completion. They will take maybe like a few pills, or at least get to the half of the prescription, and then they feel all right and then say, okay, I'm fine, I'm all right, I don't need to take anymore. But the doctor always tells you to finish it out, and it's usually like a week, depending upon the infection that you have. So what you're basically saying is that you like to stop within a process. or you like to stop the process of something that could, get you to a completion part where you are healed in that area. And so if you practice that all the time, you will always need antibiotics. Every time you turn around, you got to go to the doctor, for antibiotics, right? And so if you take that instruction that the doctor tells you and obey it and adhere to it, and people don't like that word obey, but if you obey the instruction, you advance. You finish out the bottle. So then you have built up a record. You built up a record of taking instruction, hearing instruction, taking instruction, or responding to the instruction with adherence, and then getting to the completion of that instruction and getting healed in that particular area. There is a record now. And so then when you come across another real world practical problem that may not require antibiotics in a literal sense, it might require it in a figurative sense, then you remember the record that you had where you heard something, you adhered something, you completed something. So then you say to yourself, well, I got a record of success. So then you will tap into that knowledge base and apply it to now what you're going through in a real world practical problem solving opportunity. And then if you hear it and you obey it and you complete it, that's another record. So then expertise is that record of accomplishment, completion, record of you hearing instruction, obeying instruction, adhering to instruction, and completing it in the way that it should be completed. Now you have an extensive, highly organized, integrated knowledge base that can be used to support a high level of performance. So by the time you get to your late adulthood, you have practiced so much in terms of understanding instruction, understanding knowledge, applying knowledge, and developed a wisdom for how to apply knowledge that it's not as hard for you or difficult for you to navigate your late adulthood, your early elderlyhood, and late elderly after that, right? You're right. And so when you don't do that, you are shocked when you get to a later age in life that there are problems that you have to solve because you never solved problems before. And so when you don't have that practice of solving problems, it becomes a lot difficult for you in your older age. Because expertise is developed from early adulthood to midlife, we have also developed effective approaches to solving problems, organized and applied abstract principles, and made intuitive-based type judgments. Saturated with experience, the expert intuitively feels when an approach to a problem will work and when it will not. As Burney and Stenberg and Crampy and Charnas suggest, application of knowledge is based upon past learning, experiences, and effortful practice. The development of expertise, then, is not just for the educated or elite. It is for anyone who is required to learn, apply, and monitor technical knowledge, concepts, skills, etc. So, learning how to navigate your life is technical knowledge. You have a knowledge base from the time you are in your mother's house all the way up to 18. And then I always ask my students now, where do you want to take yourself after 18 years old, right? You have learned technical knowledge, how to act in public, how to conduct yourself in public. You have all these people who leave out of their houses with a bonnet on their heads or with pajama bottoms. We never did anything like that. I'm 44 years old. No way in the world. We always knew to act right. You'll hear your mother say, "Don't you go down to that schoolhouse and embarrass me," you act right. You act right in front of that teacher, right? And if you didn't, you knew that you were going to get the belt, right? When you go to your aunt's house, you sit down on the couch. You ask to use the restroom. You call your aunt Sue, right? You don't call her Sue. So there's technical knowledge that you learn. Concepts, can be anything from coming inside when the light streaks come on, right? And then skills, of course, you having chores and having to complete chores. So these are sort of technical knowledge, concepts, and skills that you should have learned during the time that a knowledge base was being constructed for you. In terms of your mother or your father telling you or instructing you what to do. So you shouldn't be surprised then when you get your own apartment that you don't need to sweep the floor. You don't need to wash the dishes. That's something that you should have learned during the time you were young, all the way up to 18. So then when you go off to college or you go off to get your own job or you go off to go get your own apartment, that you take knowledge forward. That's a particular type of knowledge, concept, and skills that you should know. Now your job is, after 18 years old, to figure out what the new knowledge you're going to need in order to continue to progress and move yourself forward. So we have become experts in our lives in different contexts, academic, professional, and personally. Where we often struggle is in our cognitive development of moral understanding. Moral understanding is a take it or leave it application of knowledge. It is optional. So, some people really shy away from being moral. They understand that there is a such thing as ethics and morality, but they have gotten to a point where they are, becoming desensitized to what is moral, what is ethical, because basically they want to do whatever they want to do. And they need somebody to co-sign. And so as long as they don't have someone challenging them, then they feel validated in their decision to be unethical or to be immoral. Kohlberg's theory of moral development focuses on cognitive development of how we navigate moral dilemmas, which is a conflict between two moral values. Kohlberg emphasized that it is the way an individual reasons about the dilemma, not the content of the response, whether or not to steal, that determines moral maturity. Kohlberg frames his discussion into states of moral understanding, and we're going to get into that. Pay attention to that it is not is the way the individual reasons about the dilemma. So that tells you that there is a reasoning process, that you don't just pick up a gun and shoot somebody in a heat of passion. I know that we have that as a legal sort of dictate in the laws, that somebody, did something in the heat of passion. No, you have to think about that for a while before you actually put it into action. You've already visualized the apartment, the ins and outs, the person's schedule, the person that you're going to shoot, the person's schedule, the person who you're going to shoot, right? What they are like in terms of their attitudes, in terms of what moves them, in terms of when they get angry. And then you think about yourself. You think about how you've been harmed. You think about your schedule. If shooting them is on schedule for them, for you, you think about the clothes you're going to wear. You pull out the shoes. You pull out the, dark outfit. You do so much in terms of planning in your head alone. Even if you don't take your hands and plan anything out, in a physical sense, in your mind, you have already played it out. So then you are reasoning about the moral dilemma. You are saying to yourself whether or not this is a good thing for you to do. And it's not the content of the response, it's not the actual you shooting the person that is the issue, it's the reasoning towards it that takes a lot longer of a process that is the actual issue. There are 3 levels with 2 stages under each. So there is, and that's 3 levels of moral understanding. So there is the pre-conventional level. Under this level, children will accept the rules of authority figures and judge actions by consequences. So stage 1, punishment and obedience orientation. Children behave morally out of fear of authority and avoidance of punishment. They find it difficult to consider 2 points of view. So, I was always afraid if my mother said she was going to spank me about something, if I didn't do it, I made sure to do it. I didn't have to move to many stages, in order to understand that. Stage 2, instrumental purpose orientation. So children are introduced to 2 different points of view or perspectives of a moral dilemma, that they view the dilemma from a stance of reciprocity. You do this for me, and I will do that for you. And, we didn't have reciprocity in the home. If we were assigned to do a particular chore, and I was the oldest in my family, so I did all of the dishes. I swept all the floors, scrubbed the walls, things like that. When my brothers got older, a little older, and they were in, I guess, 5th or 6th grade, they became responsible for maybe taking out the trash, making the beds, things like that. We never between us said, well, if you do this for me, I will do that for you. We knew that if we didn't do that particular chore, our mother would know it, and there would be consequences. Now, there was a time when one of my brothers, he didn't like doing the chores. So, or he procrastinated and waited all the way to the time my mother would come home from work, right, to wash the dishes or take out the trash. And so my mother would yell, and instead of saying to him that he still needed to do it, she would look at me and say, why I didn't do it, and she made this comment. I said in response that it was his job to do. It was something that you gave him to do. And as a child, you're not supposed to talk back to your parents or whatever. But I was saying something just explicit. You told him to take out the trash. But she returned, why didn't you do it? I mean, you do it and you'll get the reward. Now, I never got the reward, but she made a point of sort of making me responsible for the thing that he was supposed to do. He was assigned to do. And so if you sort of perfect that strategy, later I became a person who was responsible for doing things that other people were supposed to do. And that arose out of like people pleasing. And so I had to begin addressing that before I could go on to other greater battles, because today I'm not a people pleaser. No way, no how. I stopped that somewhere in college all the way up till about 32 years old. And I began to work through using no. But that is important to understand that just at these, children, adolescent, early adulthood stages, what you do now, what you do then does have an impact on how you will navigate your life as an adult. All right, conventional level. So children regard conformity to social rules, but believe that maintaining the social system as advantageous to maintaining positive relationships and societal order. So stage 3, good boy, good girl orientation, morality of interpersonal cooperation, maintaining close personal ties is the motivation for sustaining affection and approval of friends and relatives. It is about being a good person who is trustworthy, loyal, respectful, and helpful. Reciprocity is still activated at this stage, but not because of self-interest. It is mainly activated out of a concern for the welfare of others. Now, that same brother was a type of brother who may not have been consistent with, say, taking out the trash under my mother's instruction or direction, but he was more consistent with being concerned about the welfare of a friend. So he was the one that if his friend was being bullied or something like that, he would take up for his friend. Now, he wasn't instructed to do so, and it's almost like substitution, that you won't adhere to one instruction over here on this path, but you will create an instruction by default for standing up for somebody else, right? In some ways that's good, some ways that is bad, because if you ignore instruction in other areas, if you don't adhere to that instruction, you will have problems in other areas. Because if you have the record of actually completing something, completing the instruction in this one area right here, it may have an impact in another area. I'm not saying that taking out the trash will have an impact with standing up for a bully, but you might think twice about it. I know that's far-fetched, but you might think about it a lot longer, especially if your friend doesn't appreciate you taking care of him. In all generality, being concerned for the welfare of others is not a bad thing. You know, you want to be what we call in our society, quote unquote, a good boy or a good girl, right? Your parents will, pat you on the back, pat you on the shoulders. You are a good boy, or a good girl. But it does have its, disadvantages, right? Because if you are too concerned about the welfare of others, you are not concerned about the welfare of the thing that you need to do. That's why it's not that far-fetched that there may be a link or a connection between not adhering to the instruction to take out the trash and creating an instruction to be concerned about the welfare of others, because you are not concerned about your welfare. You are more concerned about the other person's welfare, but not you. You are the one who's going to get the spanking if you don't take out the trash. Right? Stage 4, social order, maintaining orientation. So laws should never be disobeyed at this stage because they are needed to uphold society. Rules must be enforced, and moral choices no longer depend on personal ties. Everyone is duty bound. So as you sort of progress as a child into your adolescent stages, you've already had multiple chances to like obey laws, right? At least obey rules in the house, right? And if you sort of, buck at those rules and say you're going to do whatever you want to do, then outside of the home is where there will be higher consequences, because you may be able to talk crazy to your mother or to your father, but you can't talk crazy to an authority figure at your job and still keep your job. If your mother says that you have to be back in by this curfew, right? And you're learning how to manage time in one area of your life, then if you arrive late to your job, you have a struggle with managing time, or you leave your job too early, right? Your struggle is with the rule about how to manage time. You will lose your job. You can't talk to the police officer any kind of way. Whatever you did in your house, you can't get away with the police officer, because the police officer in that moment is in charge by law. If they pull you over, they have a strict police procedure that they adhere to. You may not know what it is, but your job is just to obey the law. So once you leave the house and you get into, society and the social ordering of society, you are responsible for, supporting the rules, whether you like them or not, and you are duty bound to obey them. You cannot be mad if you jaywalk and the officer gives you a ticket. What are you giving me a ticket for? That's not right. You're just against me. No, you jaywalked. That is a law on the books. So once you get to stage 4, there are no extra considerations for you that you don't understand things, because you've had so much practice from the time you were in first grade about, getting in line, standing in line, putting the toys back into the bin, eating your lunch, sitting on the little carpet, having nap time, having music time. You have had so much exposure to rule making and the enforcing of rules that you should not be surprised by the time you leave the house every day, whether you are an adolescent to high school or when you finally leave the home itself. Post-conventional or principled levels, so individuals defined morality in terms of abstract principles and values that apply to every situation and the society at large. So stage 5, social contract orientation. This is defined as a free and willing participation in the system. Individuals regard laws and rules as flexible instruments to further human purpose, but they also imagine alternatives to their personal social order and emphasize fair procedures for interpretation and application of the law. So it's like you are now in the process of creating your own social contract with society. Maybe the current trend is to, get a good job or get a good man, or you go to the military. But once you leave and, graduate high school, you have the rights and privileges and freedom to pursue your course of action. I'm not saying go into illegal activities, but you have options. I try to get my students to understand that when they are going to junior college, it's not just about you getting or completing all of your general education coursework. That your 2 years here at junior college, community college, is planning. These are 2 years of planning so that you have options. There's nothing worse than to sit there and take classes, complete tests, and then you graduate and you don't know where to take yourself. You haven't planned anything out. You haven't planned your transition. And I have been a very culprit in this. I am so guilty of this, that even though I could plan in other areas of my life, like I planned from the time that I was going to leave from Dallas to San Diego, right? And but I didn't necessarily plan the job. Now, I was able to stay in San Diego for 10 years. And I got there at the right time where my rent, I was leaving rent from here at $375. When I moved to San Diego, the rent was just $445. I had a little bit of money saved, right? And then I was able to get a job on a election campaign, and then within 3 weeks of me being in San Diego, I was able to get a full-time job. I think back to that time. I wish I would have planned a little bit more. I couldn't do that today. I don't think you can really move anywhere anymore today in the same way that I did when I moved everything on Greyhound. But had I planned out of high school, those 2 years, junior and senior year out of high school, I would have had options once I graduated. I wouldn't have had to make a bad decision and move in with some guy. And then it didn't work out, and then I ended up having to move out because he was, special. And I would have had the option of maybe having a better job, or I would have had the option, I would have planned to transition to community college or to university, but I didn't do that. All I wanted was my paper. And so I focused on one thing. I was trying to get into the military, and I couldn't get in. I did the test. I passed the test well, but I have like a knee problem and an inner ear problem. And so I didn't have any other plans after that. And so when you don't have a plan, it's good that you are free and a willing participant in the social system, but the social system is organized. It is structured. And so now, where are you actually going to place yourself? And so for life, for you at 18 years old, it will always be entry level. Anything you get into will be entry level, whether you go through the, community college or university system or a job. So it's important to plan. That's why now I have like a 7-year plan. In 2020, it's going to be a 10-year plan. Then I have individual 2-year plans because I really push planning for a transition. So stage 6 is universal ethical principle orientation. So right action is defined as self-chosen ethical principles of conscience, regardless of law and social agreement. The worth and dignity of a person must be respected. So if you find yourself shooting somebody, or kicking somebody's butt, cussing somebody out, anything, you are basically suggesting that I'm just going to ignore all of that exposure to how to treat people from the time I was in, first grade. I would go so far as, kindergarten to 18 years old to 12th grade. I'm just going to ignore all of that. None of that really had any sort of impact on me. And so now I'm just going to pick up this gun and shoot somebody. I don't have any respect for anybody other than myself. And so that takes a long time to cultivate. I don't think you graduate with that understanding just at 18 years old. I think you didn't have respect for somebody way before that. If you remember in the previous audios, I was saying that the relational aggression that people may use is often reflected in this statement, because I said so. Do it because I said so, right? So I don't know if it's always just exposure to a parent that is permissive in how they allow you to do certain things, but you have your own conscience as well. You can think on your own by a certain age, and right from wrong. And so that lack of respect for a person or for a life or whatever, that begins much earlier in your lifespan. Because moral development is a slow and gradual process, it requires cognitive self-regulation, which is defined as the process of continuously monitoring progress toward a goal, checking outcomes, and redirecting unsuccessful efforts. So, emotional regulation might be you controlling your mood. You may check your temperament right. You no longer pout and fall out on the floor. By a certain age, you should not be falling out on the floor and crying and pouting and yelling and things like that. Cognitive self-regulation is you being cognitively aware of yourself, aware of the types of goals you set, aware of the types of outcomes you expect, and aware of the fact that some efforts will be unsuccessful, but that does not necessarily mean that you cannot reach completion in other areas. So maybe in this regard, cognitive self-regulation might be, the goal would be, I'm not going to cheat on my wife. I'm not going to cheat on my husband. I'm not going to be a cheater, right? And then, of course, as soon as you make that kind of statement, here come the distractions, here come the, temptations or whatever. If you pass by not actually sleeping with someone other than your wife or other than your husband, you look at the outcome of that. That outcome is successful, right? But you could still be tempted, even though that's a good, solid goal. You can still be tempted unexpectedly. I don't believe that, because we all get ourselves into stuff. But say, for instance, you were drinking too much and you were among friends, and somehow you slipped up and, got into bed with another friend, right? And you woke up and you felt guilty. Well, that's an unsuccessful effort. It was you sort of hindering yourself by drinking, right? Hindering the goal towards completion by drinking, and you should know whether or not you can hold your liquor, right? You should know by now as an adult whether or not you can contain yourself. If you are in front of a beautiful woman or good looking man, you should know by now if you are likely to jump into bed with somebody. If you stick around, that means you want to. So then you have to go back and check your goals. So then, is that a realistic goal for you, that you're not going to cheat? That's something that you have to look at for yourself. Any other types of goals could be, I need to finish my 2 years here at the university. At the community college, right? And then you check that outcome. The outcome would be you establishing a record of completion of courses. And then if you end up failing a course, that unsuccessful effort, okay, then you take it again, right? Especially if it is a core course, right? You take it again and pass it, and then you are now able to accomplish your goal. The most important aspect of cognitive self-regulation is that you are aware. You are not asleep. For a long time, I was emotionally asleep because of some pain in my past that I never resolved. And so then I emotionally got into relationships where I was rejected, where I was treated badly, because I was emotionally asleep. And it wasn't until the last relationship where I woke up, where it was a brick wall. The person was a snake. And I didn't realize how close I came to danger, to the point that I might not be here. And so that woke me up. This is usually done in middle childhood, where school-age children learn about culture, schooling, memory strategies, information processing, and the theory of the mind. Children are often assessed on their ability to remember, to apply memory strategies gradually, using their knowledge of strategies to improve recall. They are encouraged to self-regulate, which is linked to self-efficacy or confidence in one's own abilities. So if we are self-processing, information processing in terms of learning, grade school concepts, okay, that's different. You need to advance and learn and understand. Okay, remember, apply, improve recall, for tests and things like that. What I want to focus on then is something, kind of different from that. That the teacher tells you, or the authority figure tells you, let everyone have their chance at playing with the ball. Okay? That's a very clear instruction, because everyone needs to be able to participate. However, you decide as an individual, as a school-age child, you are not going to obey that instruction. I want to hold the ball. I'm the only one who can hold the ball. And if you want the ball, you're going to have to ask me to hold the ball. But even then, I'm not going to let you hold the ball. Right? So then that part of the life strategy, how to work with other people, is not progressed or moved forward. It's not learned, because then you will see that person in their adolescent, their teenage years, their early adulthood, moving that failure at information processing to other areas of their life. So the ball could turn into holding a woman or holding a man. I'm not going to give you back your man. I'm not going to give you back your woman. The ball could be something that they stole, right? Like you have people who have white-collar criminals who have gone down for stealing pensions and thrift savings plans and things like that. Well, it began with the ball. That there was a strategy in information processing, a strategy that they did not complete, that they did not, succeed at. And so they might have learned all of their studies information, but they did not learn how to work well and respect others. And so they took that strategy of not working well with others to their later lifespan years. So now they will self-regulate when it comes to learning materials, learning concepts, but they always have to hit somebody at the bar. I mean, here it is, you work 40 hours a week, and then you go to the bar on Friday, happy hour, or on Saturday, and you can't manage yourself at the bar. You always got to take your fist and hit somebody, right? It's a number of examples you could think of where people, say for instance, they know how to manage themselves all throughout the week, but then they got to go to a club and get drunk. I mean, every time you turn around, they just have to be drunk. They just have to be high. They can keep up with their lives where it requires content development and content understanding and content application, but they cannot manage themselves when it comes to cheating. They can't manage themselves when it comes to, physical violence. They can't manage themselves when it comes to stealing and thievery. So that's kind of interesting to think about it like that. But it's all the respect game. Who you respect. It is at the point of self-regulation where people as children and then later as adults often struggle with problem solving because they take a passive orientation towards setting goals and accomplishing tasks. They have problems with organizing information, organizing the learning environment, and developing a purposeful approach. This lack of self-regulation, whether emotional or cognitive, is exhibited in adulthood when not corrected or resolved. Lack of self-regulation affects multiple contexts and situations, including romantic relationships. It affects self-esteem and the road to self-efficacy. It contributes to procrastination and the byproduct of learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is just this sort of thinking that you have that you can't learn anything, and that like learning for you is is not hopeful. It's not a thing that you can sort of attain. And when we sort of express learned helplessness in one area, we will see it in other areas as well. So learned helplessness is a researched concept. It is defined as when people, especially children, define their failures based upon their abilities. They don't define successes based upon ability. When they succeed, they conclude that external factors such as luck are responsible. They believe that their ability is fixed and not malleable. So I don't believe in luck. I believe that everything is by work ethic. Now, I will say I do believe in, divine instruction and divine wisdom on how to carry out your life, but I don't believe really in luck. That I believe in people, contributing to your life, that they might open a door for you, but it's up to you to get the work done, to walk through the door and get the work done. And luck is to say that there is no need for instruction, that you just all of a sudden was able to get that type of thing. No, the way you advance is through instruction, that someone gave you an instruction on something, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a direct sense. You could say, I want to become a writer, and then you decide to read Stephen King books, or anyone who is a successful writer. They are essentially giving you instruction on how to pursue writing and get paid for it and become famous with it, right? Their books are instructing you. Any videos they do are instructing you, right? And so luck is to say that you just so happen to become successful, or you just so happen to become good at something. Luck says there's no work needed. And so that's why I don't believe in luck, because you need the work ethic. You cannot live off luck alone, right? And so we want to talk about fixed mindset versus growth mindset, and I talked about that in a previous audio, so you should have had some exposure, but it is the Changing Our Mindset chart. So if you can remember the Changing Our Mindset chart from Carol Dweck, we talk about fixed mindset and growth mindset, and that people oftentimes who have a fixed mindset, they tend to avoid challenges. They believe their abilities are fixed. They are the people who believe in luck, that they lucked out. They're not going to really work hard at anything. They are the types of folks also who say, I am an A student. And they can truly be A students, but they are the types of people who won't take risks, maybe taking other classes, right, that challenge them, because they want to be able to maintain the A. And so if they take a class that's going to maybe cause them to lose their A status, they are essentially saying, I don't really want to learn beyond what I already know. So then they are also the type of people who will ignore constructive criticism. If you want to become great at something, it's going to require some mentoring and criticizing, right? There's no way around that. And so they tend to be the type of people who avoid challenges. They will get, they tend to get defensive. And it's easy to do. If you write, or if you construct anything, or you put your hands to work with anything, you value it so much to the point that it was already a hard task to create it and think about it and imagine it and then put it all into some concrete product, and then for someone to come along and say it's not good, that bothers you. And so if you have so many people who do that, then you won't respect the criticism. But you got to know the difference between the person who is saying it is not good and the person who is saying it needs work. That the person who is saying it is not good might be, sort of jealous of you, right? Here it is, you come up with something and they were not able to do the same. But the person who's saying that it needs work is saying that there are elements of it that are good, but there are elements of it that need more tightening. And that's what constructive criticism is. But the more you have spent time around people who say it is not good, you miss all the people who say that it needs work. So then, one of the questions that I pose to the students when I use this chart is, can a person change from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? And the students usually say, oh, yeah, sure, yeah, a person can change, right? But we think about that from a general standpoint because we want people to change, and so we hope for them to change. However, in order for you to move towards a growth mindset, you're going to have to address the areas of fixed mindset. One of the areas that's most important, if you look at all of these rows right under the column fixed mindset, the most important row to me is the criticism row. Because you can look at yourself and self-assess and say, I avoid challenges, I need to start doing more, right? You can self-assess the failure, the idiot. I need to stop calling myself an idiot. You can kind of do that on your own. The plateau early. Any person who is, athletic and love to exercise and run marathons, they know that you can plateau and that you got to do as much as you can to get over that plateau. Those areas on this under the column are very easy, or not easy, but it's easier for you to sort of think to yourself, I need to change. Where people often go wrong is the ignoring constructive criticism, because if you can address the fact that someone is telling you that your thing needs work, right, even if it's hard to do, and I'm quite sure someone is going to say the same thing about what I have put together in terms of this presentation series and then the books I have written, I'm quite sure of it. But if you can get over that hump of criticism, it will open up the doors to other areas on the growth mindset chart. So yes, you can change from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset when you address the areas of the fixed mindset, or at least start with one of the roles. And I would venture to say start with ignore constructive criticism. Learned helplessness affects one's ability to manage emotion. There are two general strategies children learn when managing emotion: problem-centered coping and then emotion-centered coping. Problem-centered coping: children in middle childhood appraise situations as changeable, identify the difficulties, and decide what to do about the problem. It could be a math problem. I loved the times tables. 2 times 2 equal 4. 2 times 5 equal 10. I just love that. But I struggled in other types of areas when it came to maybe, geometry, right? And the teacher does matter. It's you who still needs to do the work, right? But there was a teacher at my high school. I went to David W. Carter High School here in Dallas, Texas. And she was Miss Ollie. Miss Ollie was the teacher, and she was sassy. She just had a way about her. She reminds you of Patti LaBelle, and you could tell that she loved the subject matter, because she would put the geometry on the board. Now she'll call you out now. She'll call you and ask you to answer the question and things like that. But the way that she was so concerned about you trying to understand the information, she explained it. She put it on the board. She actually taught you, right? So when I would encounter problems with understanding how to do certain things in geometry, I just go back into the book and try to understand it and read it and everything. And I was actually, getting some A's on some of those tests. And she recognized it as such. So appraising the situation as changeable, that even though I came in not understanding whether or not I would be able to adapt, to that teaching style or to teaching in that mathematical course, as I sort of made a bad grade on maybe a first test or first exercise or whatever, I started to increase. So the situation was changeable. I identified the difficulty. The difficulty is simply just allowing time to do your work, right? And then deciding what to do about the problem, that the problem needs to be solved, right? So emotion-centered coping, this is internal and private. Children learn how to control distress. When emotional self-regulation is successful, it is reflected in a child and later in an adult as the ability to manage and control the emotional experience. So when you see somebody still throwing things, yelling, cussing people out, hitting on people, they stop coping emotionally somewhere in their childhood. And I always tell somebody, if you see someone, I call cheating acting out. I'm going to develop a blog post about that. But cheating is no different than a tantrum. It's a tantrum. It's someone falling out on the floor because they can't get their way. And so somewhere that person is stuck. They are stuck in some sort of time zone, season, or whatever, and that parent did not spank it out of them or instruct them in a better way in terms of how to cope, that you see that now expressed in their adulthood. These issues with developing expertise, assessing one's knowledge base, reconciling moral understanding, managing cognition and emotions, and resolving learned helplessness are all factors that contribute to addressing and solving problems. So again, you should not get to a point where you are old and you don't know how to solve problems, right? It is procrastination that affects problem solving. Enough time utilizing procrastination will affect how an individual reconciles life overall. This means that procrastination is avoidable and preventable. Procrastination runs counter to conscientiousness, one of the big 5 personality traits. So, the big 5 personality traits are NEOAC. So what these two authors are suggesting about the big 5 is that personality is structured among 5 dimensions, which is NEOAC. They argue that personality traits tend to be bipolar, with some people scoring on diagnostic tests at either extreme, so they can be high or low. The following make up the big 5. So we always hear people call someone neurotic, right? She's a neurotic. And what that basically means is that that person is highly anxious. So if we gave a big 5 personality test to someone, and if they scored high, they would fall under one or more of these, categories. If they scored low. So if a person is highly neurotic or scores high in neuroticism, they tend to be anxious, temperamental, self-conscious, emotional, vulnerable. If they score low, they tend to be calm, even-tempered, self-satisfied, comfortable, unemotional. Extroversion is essentially being outgoing. So if a person scores high, they would be affectionate, joiner, talkative, fun-loving, active, passionate. If they score low, reserved, loner, quiet, sober, passive, and unfeeling. Now, I would score low on extroversion because I am a loner. I'm reserved when I'm in a room full of people, not because I'm afraid to meet people, but because I'm sort of checking people out. That's why I like to sit at the back, and I can get a full view of the room, and you see the personalities at play. Quiet, I will be quiet within an area, then sober, and then passive. I used to be passive because I grew up in an environment that required me to adhere, to obey. So therefore, when you are, and it was a strict environment, and so and could also be hostile. So then you develop a passive orientation to life. It wasn't until I started going to college that I began to become, I began addressing the passive aspects of myself, like people pleasing, right? Passive aggressiveness. When I began to address those areas, and then I sort of began reaching towards becoming more active, standing up for myself. Now that didn't happen until much later in life, but it is something that I do have a record of transitioning. Openness. So if you score high, you tend to be imaginative, creative, original. You prefer variety, curious, liberal. If you score low, you tend to be down to earth, uncreative, conventional, prefer routine, uncurious, and conservative. If you look at in both columns, prefer variety and prefer routine, Variety could be like a number of things, but a lot of times when people step out of their marriages or long-term cohabitating relationships, it's usually because they want sexual variety. It's funny. I was watching Love After Lockup, and there was a person named Megan who was from Fort Worth, Texas, and she was meeting a guy who had, gotten out of prison, but he was married to someone else and had kids. And so he called himself wanting to propose to Megan. And Megan was a virgin. She was 28 years old and a virgin. And when they finally met, wherever he was, I think in New York, and they got together into the hotel and everything, he wanted her to strip in front of her. Now, she's a virgin. I'm not saying she hasn't had any exposure to, things or whatever, to, activities, but she clearly said that she was a virgin. So how is she going to understand how to strip? And so what it was is that he wanted that kind of variety. He was married with kids, out of prison, but he wanted to cheat and be with someone else. And that's why you may oftentimes find people who may marry, someone else simply because of the sexual variety. It could be curious as well. When it comes to routine might be more economic. So if a person leaves you, it's because you are taking them out of a routine. You can't keep a job. You won't even be stable for you. And usually women might let go of a man for that reason, right? They might put up with the man for a long time, as we have all done, but eventually the fact that you don't have any aim or ambition, or you can't stay on a job longer than 2 years, or you got to move from place to place all the time or whatever, that's going to bother a woman who likes predictability, who likes routine. I don't know about men because I'm not a man. I'm quite sure that they like some kind of routine. Men today want women to have jobs. It used to be that the man was solely the breadwinner and he wanted you to stay home to take care of the kids. Now today they want you to have jobs. And so they might prefer routine in that area, but they would prefer variety in the bedroom, however. Agreeableness. So if you score high, you tend to be soft-hearted, trusting, you're generous, acquiescent, lenient, and good-natured. If you score low, you tend to be ruthless, suspicious, you're stingy, antagonistic, critical, and irritable. I've heard a lot of comments about men that oftentimes when they are meeting a woman for the first time, the first thing they check the obvious aspects of that woman, if in terms of youthfulness, physical attractiveness, things like that. But they also check her personality and her attitude. And if you hear men talk all the time, they don't want a woman with an attitude. And so that means that the person with an attitude tends to be sort of irritable and critical and antagonistic. And the worst thing that a man wants when it comes to a woman is for that woman to be more aggressive. I said in a previous audio, I think under Not the Marrying Kind, part 3 or part 4, that female aggression is one deal breaker for a man. Could be probably the major deal breaker, for a man. I'm quite sure if the woman cheated on him, that he would have a problem with that. But it's nothing worse, I think, for a man to have someone with a bad attitude. For a woman, we tend to put up with a lot more because somewhere in the relationship we begin to become, a mother. We tend to mother the man after a certain time in a relationship. So we might interpret that as an opportunity to comfort, if he has a bad attitude, right? And that's where we might usually score high on agreeableness, because we might be soft-hearted, trusting, acquiescent, We're not going to engage his irritable mood. We're not going to antagonize him or whatever. We're just going to be more long suffering until he does something so violent or something like that we have no other choice but to leave, right? But when it comes to a woman, however, men, I think that's on their top list, and I don't even think it's top 10. I think it's like top 1 to 5. She cannot have a bad attitude. Conscientiousness. So if you score high on conscientiousness, you tend to be conscientious. Conscientious is essentially doing what is right because right is right. So you need to arrive to work on time. That's in the rule book, but it should be obvious because you need to clock in right at the time of your shift. You shouldn't be surprised that if you clock in late, that your pay is not going to be docked, right? Hardworking, well organized, punctual, ambitious, persevering. And then if you score low, you tend to be negligent, lazy, you're disorganized, late, aimless, and quitting. And women here do have problems with men who don't have aim. I will say this. I don't know about men because I'm not a man. But I do know that women, if they have aim, now aim is relative. If the aim is to get a good job and keep a good job, stay on that job 20, 25 years and retire, okay, then that woman might have a problem with the man leaving a good job and going into business for himself. She can't see the vision of him becoming an entrepreneur and being successful if she's this type of woman, and she might actually exit the relationship, right? So she might have problem with his aim, even though her aim is still a good aim, because it's an aim to be stable. There's nothing wrong with being stable. People like to call stable boring, but it's always the boring. It is always the people who call the other people who are boring who always need help. You always end up having to take them in, right? Because they have lived for the day. They have been lazy, negligent and disorganized and late and aimless and quitting everything. They have done that from the time they were, in high school, early adulthood, all the way up to their 40s, almost 50s, and they don't have any sort of record of success. They don't have anything to lean on in terms of, savings or whatever, and they end up having to move in with you. So they like to call the conscientious people boring, right? But there's nothing wrong with that kind of aim to have a good job, things like that. But if there's an aim, say for instance, in my regard, I'm going to keep my job because teaching is a calling, but I also have entrepreneurial pursuits that I am interested in creating opportunities for people who are homeless, who are getting out of prison, and then people who are military in transition. So that's going to take planning. So I started out with a 7-year plan from 2013, and that plan was to change my economic position, my economic level. I had lost my job years ago. I ended up homeless, had to go into shelters, had to live with family sometimes, and I said, so from 2013, and I was in a homeless shelter at the time. I was in the Salvation Army, I think. Yeah. And so, and I was able to get on program, and I was able to stay there for like 6 months, right? The program was for 6 months. And so somewhere in between April and May of 2013, I need a 7-year plan. I need it because if you are having to live in a shelter, live with somebody, lose your job or whatever, you are literally below poverty level. I'm quite sure you may say different, right? Because if you're living in somebody's house and it's a nice house, how are you poverty level? But if it's not your house and they can tell you to leave at will, that's poverty level, right? And so I said in 2013, I'm going to establish a 7-year plan. And during that plan, I said I needed to create products in order to be able to help the people later in an advocacy role. I was going to, continue teaching and everything. And so my aim then was to create that 7-year plan. So it is now 2019. 2020 will be the accomplishment of that 7-year plan, provided I make it and I am alive. And then in 2020 is where I'm actually going to establish a 10-year plan. So when I met the guy that I met, he had no aim. He was, negligent, kind of lazy and negligent in his life. He can get a job, but he would not stay on that job. He would always complain. 6 months into the job, he's complaining about it. And so he had no real aim. He sounded like he did. He looked like he gave off the appearance that he did, but he had no vision. He was, disorganized. He was more successful at cheating and infidelity than he was in the other areas of his life. And I talked about that in reason number 8, that a person is, they are more successful at cheating than they are in any other area of their life. And so that was going to be an issue. I was hoping that he would turn it around, but he didn't. And he let cheating be the main force in his life. So therefore, he ended up having to leave. The cheating is what sort of kicked him out of here, out of my house. But I will, venture to say that the ambition was going to be an issue. Because had he stayed, he would have stayed with a good face, right? And then when the money came in, rolled in, he would then leave, take the money and go with his ex. And I saw the vision of that. So like I said, there may be two aims that are going on when a woman is deciding to leave someone or to, exit someone out of their life. If her aim is to get a good job, stay on that job, be stable, and the person she is with can't stay on the job for the life of them, she might leave that relationship, right? My aim in particular was planning and being a visionary and trying to go after something, but his aim was not that. He was just aimless. He just quitting, whatever. When it comes to a man, it depends on what the man values. If the man values a woman at the house, cooking and cleaning, washing and ironing, and he comes home for work and the whole house is in disarray, that might be a deal breaker for him. If he leaves her, I don't know if he truly loved her. It's hard to tell, but that may be a bothersome thing, right? When it comes to the woman being conscientious, hardworking, a deal breaker still might be if she is more available at her job than available for him. So she can be a high value woman who is, say, conscientious, hardworking, well organized, punctual, ambitious, and persevering, but the persevering might be so much to him to the point that he feels she's sort of competing against him. And if that's the case, if that's what he values and it is a problem for him, then he may exit that relationship. And that's all under conscientiousness. Now that we have an understanding of conscientiousness, i.e., it reflects in a person who is industrious, dutiful, and organized, it is easier to see how people utilize procrastination in romantic relationships. A procrastinator will fall under neuroticism because it reflects anxiety about completing a task. Procrastinators tend to postpone out of fear of failure and success. They do not want to make a mistake, and they stop because the task makes them feel bad. Walking away makes them feel better. We see this Decision making, oftentimes in romantic relationships where postponing runs counter to working out the problems in a relationship. The best solution to procrastination is conscientiousness. In other words, just get started. So I'm quite sure you can understand how there is a connection to romantic relationships, but I'm going to bring in another type of example when it comes to my students. So I teach composition 1 and 2. And I always get students in either class who say, I'm bad at writing. Right? They love to do that. And if you can visualize that student and anyone else, even yourself, when you say I'm bad at writing, okay, it is a form of learned helplessness, right? But it is also the physical representation. The physical representation is of you folding your arms. I'm bad at writing, and immediately you fold your arms, right? You folding your arms is like saying to the person, I don't want to really receive instruction from you about writing. I'm telling you right now, I'm bad at writing. So even if I know I have to do the work in this class in order to pass, but I'm still telling you I'm bad at writing. And they may go good with that for a while, struggle with that understanding for a while, things like that. And then they may begin to score well on papers, and I give them good comments on their papers, and they realize, oh, well, I mean, I used to be bad at writing, but I mean, with this paper right here, it seems like I understood. And I'll tell them, I said, you said that you are bad at writing, but with this paper right here, it looks like you have either a good command of the topic or you are passionate about the topic, right? So they might score well or not well on subsequent papers and activities, but then they get to the end of the course and say, basically, I used to be bad at writing. I will administer a reflection essay, and I have them to write what they have learned in the class, right? It gives me feedback, and they will usually say, the ones who started out saying that they were bad at writing, say, by the end of the course, I really got good at writing. I was surprised myself, right? And I'm just, paraphrasing. But they had the initial belief system of being of learned helplessness, and then I had to basically challenge that belief system and get them to begin working. When I say this sentence, I have this sentence, basically, just get started. When you say you are bad at writing, I will usually tell students, start somewhere. I'm the type of person, I was crazy. I used to say I needed to have a special desk, a special computer, a special this or whatever in order for me to get started. And then that scripture that I said at the beginning of this audio, that don't wait for perfect conditions, you will never get anything done. I had to begin addressing that area. So it took much later, for me to get it, but I learned that I just needed to get started. So one aspect could be you start with the first paragraph. You start with an introduction. I'm not really good with introductions when I'm writing. I like to write all of the body paragraphs first. So I will start there, and then I will come back and do the introduction and then the conclusion. So if you would just get yourself started. So then now let's, take it to the romantic relationships. People say, I'm bad at marriage. I'm bad at romantic relationships. And then you look at them, folding their arms and almost putting their hands on their ears because they don't want to hear. Well, life is all about problem solving. Is all about decision making. There's no way around that. So then you take a decision, you take a problem one at a time. Don't try to solve the whole problem. When I was with my ex, he said he had dreams in his heart, but he had no record of accomplishment. And so I would tell him, maybe take a class. I mean, this thing you want to do right here, maybe take a class at the community college, right? There came a time when I told him to sit down and plan out the thing that he wanted to accomplish. And he's one of those types of people. He's too smart for his own good. He's real intellectual in terms of he can read something and understand it, and and regurgitate it and everything. For me, I got to pray and ask God, please help me to understand something. And so he's like my younger brother. They have like a quick understanding of something that they can read a history book and be able to talk about it. They have really great rote memorization. Right, they have a way of understanding things. Like I said, not me. I got to pray and read it, 50 times before I get it. But his problem was he didn't want to get started. He wanted everything already worked out. I have this dream, and so God should be able to, just give me this stuff or whatever that I want. I want to be rich. I want to be this, whatever. But he was never going to do any work towards it. And so that's where a lot of times people are very offended, that they don't understand that problems need to be solved, that there's no such thing as a math problem not being solved. So a relationship, why people jump in and jump out of relationships, it is simply because they don't want to solve a problem. With my past situation, I was trying to solve the problem. I was trying to get us to solve the problem of him going back and forth with his ex and cheating and things like that. But once I realized that last time he cheated and she sent me a text message, once I realized that he was truly not going to change, the problem was solved. That he was not going to change, that cheating was his lifestyle, and that I was at my crossroads moment, and that if I wanted to stay with him, I would have to accept the cheating too. And once I realized that he was basically, suggesting that, I was done. Now, am I more inclined to go into a relationship, a romantic relationship, even a marriage now? I'm not sure. I can't tell you that. Right now, I am in solitude, and I would rather stay there, do these videos, these audios, create the courses for it, things like that. I think I am more productive in this way. But just get started. Anything that you are struggling with, anything that you are considering, you have to be able to write the vision down. That's in Habakkuk in the scripture as well. It's write the vision down, right? So you have to be able to write the plan down. That could be a way that you get started. There are many types of procrastinators, but only 3 are needed here. The last 2 are considered chronic procrastinators. So indecisive procrastinator. This is the person who cannot make up his or her mind about executing a task. Arousal procrastinator. This is the person who swears that he or she does better under rush to meet a last-minute deadline. They can't get started unless they enter that rush. They believe that they work better under pressure. And then avoidant procrastinator, this person will delay out of fear. They are afraid of failure, judgment, and success. They have a task aversion to completing goals. So taking the indecisive procrastinator, this is the person that I've been talking about throughout these audios. This is the person that you get into a relationship with, you are engaged, and then somewhere in the relationship he says, let's just wait and see, right? Let's wait and see. Now he has sort of halted the engaging process of your relationship. And I tell you, the reason why they do that, and it can be a man or woman, is because the person that they are really interested in is not coming around, but somehow that person texted or called, and they're maybe trying to get back into a relationship with your partner. And so your partner would then tell you, let's just wait and see, right? And what they're doing is waiting until the person comes fully around. So then they will work on the person. They will try to groom the person. They will try to appeal to the person. They will even get themselves better, go get a better job, save money, right? Try to, give them some money to pay their phone bill or, car note or anything like that, just to let that person know that they are still in relationship with their ex. Now, you don't know all these things. You think that they are working towards a relationship with you. But as soon as they say, let's just wait and see, they have already stopped the relationship. I don't care if you are in that relationship 2 years and 8 months later like I was. He said the exact same thing, and I thought it was us. I thought he was struggling, or I thought he was wanting to work things out in terms of get himself together while I was getting myself together. No, that's not what that was. He had already, his indecisiveness was his form of decisiveness. So his indecision was a decision. And so if you hear someone say that to you, immediately plan your exit. The arousal procrastinator, I have an academic example. It's the one that I said in a few slides, procrastinating on writing a paper. And I'll wait till the very night before to write the paper, and stressed out and crying and everything. And then I would print out the paper and turn it in. And so I thought I was being productive. I've always had this kind of bad understanding about quantity over quality, right? That's why I said in a previous audio that I used to take 8 classes a semester and get all B's. When a friend offered constructive criticism and said, if you take 4, you can get all A's. And then I didn't adopt his criticism until much later when it was time to graduate. And he was right. I had, taken a semester where I only enrolled in 4 classes, I think 5 really, and I got all A's. I think I got maybe like an A minus. So it took too long for me to basically adopt that constructive criticism, but I got it and I understand it and I push it now in my classes with my students. But what I learned now being a teacher from my mistakes of being an arousal procrastinator was that whatever you write the night before is not of quality. That if you pull something together the night before and you don't have like a working draft that you wrote maybe 2 weeks prior, or even a week prior, or it can be a couple of days prior, but you don't have a draft, you are writing something new the night before the deadline, right? That's not of quality. And it took me becoming a teacher to see that, to understand that, because when I'm teaching students, I'm really still teaching myself, right? And so I learned that wasn't of quality. And so that thinking is what also helped me to begin planning out my master's thesis at the time. But it's that rush you feel when you are under pressure. Now, how this relates to romantic relationships, it might be, it could be related to cheating, you under pressure about something. But usually it's something in your personal, academic, and professional lives where you tend to exercise arousal procrastination, because we tend to run to things that are dysfunctional. Cheating is dysfunctional. We will run to it, but we will be negligent in the things that we actually need to do in our academic, personal, and professional lives. Then the avoidant procrastinator is that sort of person who is the fixed mindset person, right? They are afraid of failure. But the avoidant procrastinator is one who also is averse to completing goals. They don't value the importance of goal setting, right? Or they will goal set, they will create a goal, but they don't believe, they think it's optional, to complete a goal. That's why you have to look at the goals you set, because in some cases you can have optional goals. Some things could be an option if something don't work out, but there are certain goals that actually need to be accomplished in your life. So going to college, enduring college, completing college was a goal. I needed to complete that. But when I graduated, I was interested in going to Japan to teach English. That was an option. I looked into it, I learned about it, and I realized after I assessed the situation that it was not economically feasible for me to travel. Even though the job would pay me money, you still need somewhere somewhere between $10,000, $15,000, $25,000 to go to another country. And the reason why it's more expensive in that country, even students who want to travel from overseas, international, to come to the U.S. on a visa or passport, there is a financial requirement that they have to present and prove that if they come over here, they can take care of themselves. So I didn't have to complete that goal because I realized that was not an economically feasible goal. But marriage is a goal. Marriage, staying in marriage, right? That's a goal. And many people are not completing those goals and, dipping in and dipping out of marriage, or they are married and they decide to dip into the sex market and have sex and, go out on dates like they are single people. And so, and I don't know how that sort of ties into failure. Maybe they think that cheating is a necessary thing to help them to be able to complete their marriage. It's just crazy. I know, it's crazy. But these are your three types of procrastinators. I'm quite sure you can find other types on the web, but it is always related to the initial goal you set, and you have to know if that goal is realistically feasible for you to accomplish. Task aversion is a trigger for procrastination, so it is linked to temporal delay, which is defined as the closer a person gets to a reward or feeling of accomplishment, the more valuable the reward seems, and hence the less likely he is to put off performing the work needed to earn it. You can look at the opposite side of this, that it seems like people tend to also run from accomplishment. When you run from accomplishment, you are basically suggesting that you don't want the responsibility that's going to come after the accomplishment. That you have like perpetual students, people who never graduate, right, from college. You have people who are perpetual in their ways in handling relationships. They never stick to one relationship because they understand that if they stay in that relationship or if they accomplish that goal, they're going to have to be responsible. And people avoid responsibility. They procrastinate in responsibility because it is more convenient not to know if something is going to work out, because then you can stick another option, make it a goal, and then another option, and then another. And people like the options. They just love options. And so what people often need is that immediate gratification. They are more motivated by it than they are by the process leading to accomplishment. Immediate gratification is not really responsibility. It's just that you are soothed and comforted in a particular area instead of you actually working towards, because working towards something is painful. it makes you mad that you feel like you have to work towards something. Why can't it just be that I just get it, right? Why do I have to work out this math problem? When I'm in the office with other instructors, I see math instructors oftentimes checking students' work. And we all know from math that you had to show your work, right? We had to work out the problem. You just could not put an answer on the answer sheet, right? You had to show the teacher that you worked out the problem. And I noticed that the teacher, the instructor, is not just checking the answer against her answer sheet. She's actually checking to see line by line if the student is working out the problem. And I do the same thing with writing, but it's always in terms of, say, looking at the thesis statement to see if it is developed throughout the paper, the use of supporting evidence, if the students are sort of formatting for citation reasons, like for MLA. I'll look at the transition of paragraphs. I'll look at stuff line by line as well. But I was so humbled still by that math teacher checking all those papers and checking each paper under each math problem line by line to see if the student is working out the math problem and marking an X in a line that looks like the student has missed an understanding of it, right? And so when you get immediate gratification, you miss that line by line process of learning. That the thing you want is still, you can accomplish it, but it's still going to take work. And that's why people tend to, get out of relationships at first sign of trouble, because they don't know how to work beyond that obstacle. The idea about immediate gratification is a general theme in romantic relationships. People often reject waiting in a relationship for sex or other aspects. For men and women, whoever will give them what they want, that person deserves more priority. However, both are procrastinating the process and development of understanding regarding the relationship and what it needs and the problems that need resolution. They are procrastinating also the emotional regulation needed. So when you see a person who is divorced, and I just do not want to talk about people who are divorced, that is already a hurtful experience. And I believe in many divorces, people really truly try to work things out, and then it just reaches a divorce. There's contribution from both sides, and I have never been married and I have never been divorced. So take what I say with a grain of salt. But in many cases that lead to divorce, each partner was wanting the immediate gratification of marriage. What that means psychologically, mentally, spiritually, financially, economically, in all categories. Academically, professionally, personally, any category you want. That they wanted the immediate gratification, and that they didn't understand that marriage is actually a process. That it does not begin and end with the marriage ceremony. That it begins with the I do, and that the I do has to be I do used in multiple areas of your life, leading to death do you part. That I do, when you say I do, you say I believe, right? Because in order for you to do something, you have to believe first. What oftentimes people don't understand, that there are also counter arguments in marriage, that there is an original I do that you say, that we too are going to get married and be married. And then there's a counter argument that one of the partners propose that basically suggests that I no longer want to say I do to us originally. That's why you have people, stepping out and cheating. You have people changing jobs. When you get married, you are taking responsibility for each other. That is emotionally, psychologically, mentally, financially, economically, academically, professionally, personally. You are taking responsibility. So that I do is also about responsibility. And so when the person says a counter argument or presents a counter argument that I'm going to quit my job, they are saying I no longer I do. Their belief system is changing. And now you are in a relationship where the I do's are changing. And now you have problems. And some people will leave the relationship when the I do's change, because I didn't marry you just for you to quit your job. And some people do marry just to quit their job. You don't know that they're doing that, but they do that, right? So now the I do's are changing. Now there's a problem set in. And people think that the solution, one partner might think that the solution would be to quit. I'm done with you. Another partner might apply the solution of let's stick it out. So if you can get beyond that immediate, gratification belief system and get beyond that and begin resolving problems, then there's a lot more hope. When you divorce, however, you stop the process. And I venture to say, unless you begin journaling and writing from pain, and I have a blog entry for that on my website, writing from pain, that you will stop the learning process as well. So you have divorced and stopped the learning process and progress of your marriage, of your different I do's. Now you are out of that relationship, that context, that environment. What we often think, though, is that we don't have any more to learn, that is it. But you still need to learn from the divorce, that the divorce is, there's a word that I'm thinking about, like a monkey wrench, like an interruption. You throw a monkey wrench into the marriage. And so now there is no sort of opportunity, unless you remarry that person, there's no opportunity to sort of, get back that learning process. What happens is if you don't start journaling and going to counseling and praying or reflecting on that decision, you jump into another marriage. And then you still are in the mindset of immediate gratification. So surely this marriage is going to be the one that helps me and saves me and helps me, But then you still live in that understanding of immediate gratification, that you solved your immediate problem, whatever that immediate problem was. And that you don't understand that you have said another I do that still requires process. And what people do is they tend to procrastinate the learning process. So then that second marriage will go good for a while, and then all of a sudden you end it. And all that basically is that maybe you don't know about yourself, maybe you have emotional regulation issues, maybe you have cognitive self-regulation issues, but it's all about your lifespan and what you have sort of developed as expertise, that you don't have a record of accomplishing things at multiple levels, seasons in your life. And so your task then will be to just quit, because the only thing that you are good at for sure, for certain, is quitting something. So then it becomes important for you to assess your quitting or your belief system in quitting, because you can't leave everybody. It doesn't make any sense to be married 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times and you still haven't learned anything. and then now you want to marry, for a ninth time. I don't have to put this on marriage. I can put this on just relationships. You shouldn't jump in and out of relationships within this short term span without learning something, because in every relationship there's some sort of opportunity for learning. And I shouldn't have had to get to say 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, I think, and I'm 44 now. I shouldn't have had to get to my late 30s to begin understanding that certain relationships are about game and gaming, and that I have been picking people who played me or gamed me or used me as a rebound, or I've been picking them out of hastiness, out of some sort of immediate gratification, some sort of need for immediate gratification. It could be to have a relationship. It could have been just to have sex or whatever. And then the relationship that was short-term turned into some sort of long-term thing, right? And then it didn't work because it started out, dysfunctional, because I didn't know myself. I was struggling with myself. And so I shouldn't have had to get to that, because there were opportunities much earlier in my late 20s, 30s, right? There were opportunities to learn then, but I was more concerned with the immediate gratification that, getting into a relationship gives you than the process itself. What people often do to avoid managing emotions and completing tasks is set a different goal. They have an initial goal to create a long-term relationship, but their perspectives on problems as being unresolvable hinder their ability to complete a difficult task in the relationship, the one that requires a truthful response. So here is an example. An example of a task might involve resolving something as simple as providing an explanation of why a partner came home late. It becomes a task because the offended party makes it one by asking the questions, why didn't you call? Why are you late? Now the responding partner must answer the questions. Instead of answering the question directly, he or she shifts the discussion. So some people it's much easier for them, and they have developed this as a skill, to lie. A truthful response, a direct, truthful response would be, I was with my ex. Right, this happened to me. And so my ex decided to come home late one night, and I asked him, why is he late, right? Where was he? And he did some sort of mulberry bush answer. But then I have learned over the years in other areas of my life, non-romantic, to make the question more explicit. Were you with her? Right? That's a yes or no answer. You don't need to get all creative with with that. Then I got a little bit more aggressive and pushed him into the answer, and he basically told me he was with her. So what people often do, they avoid, because they go into their minds and think, well, if I say yes, she's going to tell me to leave. If I say no, I can delay something, right? But she might find out, and then I'm going to have to tell her, yes, I was, and then I have to leave. And so they do things that are more convenient for them. But a truthful response would be to answer the question, directly in the way that you see it, or the way that you hear it. Why didn't you call? Why are you late? The truthful response would be, I was with someone else having sex. Now, you're not going to get people who do that. Nowhere in the world. Nowhere in the world they're going to do that. No one is going to be that honest, right? They only get honest like that when they are very prideful, arrogant, haughty, and they want to make sport of the idea that they are with someone else. If you remember Tyler Perry's movie Diary of a Mad Black Woman, right? And when the male character, the husband, decided to get rid of his wife, he brought his mistress to the house, and he basically gave a reason about why he didn't call, why he was late, because he was with her, and that it was time for his wife to leave, and then he dragged her out of the house, right? It only becomes that, but I think they had been married since like 18, 19 years or whatever. Why didn't he say that then? He had all of that time to say it then, right? But he didn't want to, because it was more convenient for him to get the benefits of being in a relationship with his wife. So that could have been cooking, cleaning, ironing, having someone in the bed, and that last year or so of their marriage, he said they had stopped sleeping with each other. That meant that he was cultivating the sexual relationship with his new partner. But the truthful response, that sort of avoiding, we all do it. That avoiding really turns into a lie. A partner who does not answer truthfully may have a capacity problem or may have a moral understanding problem. For the first, the partner may be refusing to tell the truth about why he or she is late. For the second, the partner knows morally that it is wrong to come home late in a romantic relationship, but decide to do so regardless of the feelings of the other partner. The capacity problem could be that people have, cultivated lying. That is so hard for them to stop lying. That means that they don't have a process of addressing why they lie. I remember while I was in the shelter, and I talk about this in the book, that we had to go and do group, a group of women talking, having conversation with on-site psychologist, right, like a counselor person. And the counselor gave us a target discussion about lying and have you ever lied, and what do you think about lying? And I was waiting for my response. And when she finally came to me, I said, my past experiences with lying was in me framing the statement, to kind of please that person, right? It was like framing the lie, right? I knew I was lying at that time, but if I can give it to them in this type of way, it may not hurt their feelings, but it's all lying. And when my ear heard the word framing, I knew that I had a problem with lying. When I was younger, I used to stutter really badly. And so when you are a stutterer, it's hard to get those words out. Here it is, your mother or your father is yelling at you to tell them the truth. And whatever words could come out of my mouth, form out of my mouth, those are the words I could say. I said. But it was very difficult at that time when I was younger. And then lying sort of cultivated lying so that I wouldn't hurt somebody's feelings, right? I never had a capacity problem to tell the truth in other areas. It was always a relational situation where the person might have been a bully or the person might have been too aggressive, and I was always a rejected child, bullied child. And so when you are that type of child and have those types of experiences, you tend to be passive and you tend to want people to like you, so you say whatever you can in that moment, almost, forcing it out of your mouth, right? So I had learned that, and I thought about that, and it bothered me, and I put it in the book as well, how I began to address that and talk about it and write about it and get over it. I don't lie today. I don't do that today. But it did take a process for me to understand. For the moral understanding of the issue, some people believe that even though they have exposure to the idea that it is morally wrong to cheat, they abandon the morality issue, the morality problem, and say this is something that is necessary for me. So for the second, the partner knows morally that it is wrong to come home late in a romantic relationship, but decide to do so regardless of the feelings of the other partner. It doesn't matter what the other partner feels. This is what I feel like I need to do. This is something that for me. You'll hear people who cheat. This is something for me. I wrote a script, and I put that in the script as well, that why can't you just let me have this? Why can't you let me have this one thing? Okay, well, you're married. If you want that one thing, get out of a relationship with me and go be with the person. But people want the benefits of marriage. They want the benefits of a long-term relationship partner. They want the benefits of being able to come home to someone safely and securely in terms of emotionally, mentally, and psychologically, and then for some people, economically and financially. Partners who deceptively remain in relationships without assessing their roles and contributions, instead wanting to remain in the relationship because it is convenient, are said to adopt a different goal than their partners. There are two major types of goal orientations, and I talked about this in a previous audio as well. This topic refers to academic settings where learning and performance is assessed, but it is applicable to any environment that requires study of response patterns. So I'm putting this here because when we get to the end, and this is a 43 slide audio, when we get to the end, you're going to understand why I actually have this in the audio. So the learning goal orientation, these are people with a learning goal orientation who hold the belief that learning abilities can be developed. They pursue a mastery orientation of a subject and are willing to further develop. These are the people that Dweck refers to as having a growth mindset. They desire to learn for learning's sake. They are not the type of people who are just going to put the answer on the answer sheet. These are the types of people who want to master the subject matter. They want to understand how to work out the quadratic equation line by line. A performance goal orientation, people with a performance goal orientation are people who hold the belief that ability is fixed and it cannot be changed. These people stress short-term performance results. They reflect a fixed mindset. They desire to demonstrate knowledge and look smart. These are the people who say, I'm an A student, but they don't say that they have taken risks, anything like that. They also just like to look smart, so they won't do the studying, they won't do the preparation. They just want to look smart. You have reality TV is really performance goal orientation. Now, I read so much stuff and I read so much heady content or whatever that I'm not ashamed to say that I watch, reality TV. It's for entertainment. It's for me to relax. It's for me to laugh. But when you think about it, they have no training in acting. Hence, it is reality TV. I get it. I understand. But you may have maybe a handful of people with a master's degree in fine arts. Usually it's connected to writing and acting, right? But most of the people, they come from different backgrounds, and they are usually connected to someone who is actually, famous, right? Like Love and Hip Hop, right? They are usually, famous rappers in their day, and then they have husbands and wives, and then they also have friends and children and things like that, right? But Love and Hip Hop or the Real Housewives of any of those cities or any other type of reality TV, you're not going to see them going and sitting down in an actor's workshop training how to be an actor. They're not going to read books on how to be an actor. They're going to look like an actor. Keeping Up with the Kardashians, they are not actors. They get a lot of media attention and press attention and a lot of praise, for what they do on that show. But they are essentially adopting a performance goal orientation. They got cameras that are surrounding them, and there may be a target discussion, for that episode or per scene, but they are basically just talking, drinking, having conversations, laughing, or whatever. But there's no real sort of intended effort to make the show reflect like an acting skill, right? That's a performance goal. So they look like actors. They look like they demonstrate knowledge and look smart. Think about people who have cooking shows now. There are some people who actually went to culinary school, and then there are some actors now who have their own cooking show. Now, I don't begrudge anybody their opportunity. I don't begrudge the reality TV person or the celebrity who decides to have a furniture collection, a cooking show, a clothing collection, and I'm talking about the people who didn't go to school for it. I don't begrudge them their opportunity. They are really doing something with their lives. But it is important to note that they did not go to culinary school, that there are some actors now who have cooking shows on the Cooking Channel. They just are personalities. Now, I'm not saying they did not go through some sort of process to try to get them to present cooking on the screen. But you don't see anything in their background that basically suggests that they prepared for the role. So a lot of what you see now is more performance goal orientation, and people are receiving money. They are receiving praise for that. But you still need to pursue a mastery orientation in the thing that you want to accomplish. Like I say with students, people like to protest and have these protesting activities, but I said what's going to end up happening is that you're just going to see a lot of protesting but no real planning. You're going to see the yelling, you're going to see people walking and protesting and all these different protest movements, right? But you're going to have to eventually come off that street, go into a law library or university library, take a pen and paper and begin to study the issue. There was this, I think she's a congresswoman, but her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She has put forth the Green New Deal. And I was talking to my students about this in class, and I don't begrudge her that idea, but I also don't see anything in her background regarding preparation for that. I don't see a master's thesis, a doctoral dissertation, any sort of planning, reading, writing on that topic. All I see is that she was elected and she wants to make moves and makes changes, and she says now we need a Green New Deal. Well, the initial New Deal already cost a lot of money back then. And so anything that you're going to bring now with green and sustainable energy technology is going to cost even more. You also have to take into consideration that they are trying to cut back a lot of the social services and welfare benefits and all these other types of entitlements, because we are now in $20 trillion trillion debt. And so the Green New Deal, she wants to have it put into play in about 5 years. There's no way in the world that's going to happen. You already have Trump. This is the 23rd of May, 2019. I think it was either yesterday or today, where he was talking about he's not going to work with Democrats in terms of the infrastructure. Okay, and so my point is this, is that whatever you want to rule over, you need to become a student of. So even if you're going to have a performance goal orientation, the fact that she presented a Green New Deal right after she was elected does not tell me that, or it tells me that she didn't really prepare for that. None of the staff members around her have that knowledge base, right? She doesn't have that knowledge base. It's an idea, and it sounds like a good idea, but you are not going to become the ruler of that until you become a student of it. What is his name? Bernanke. I think he was the either Fed chair or Treasury secretary, or one of them during the recent financial crisis. Well, and his name is spelled Bernanke, and he taught at Princeton, and he studied the Great Depression. He studied everything around the Great Depression, right? And so when he made a decision during the recent financial crisis, it was an informed decision that he was willing to become a student over that area of financial crises, so that it would be tested later, that knowledge tested later and applied in a more professional, political, governmental context. But he became a student. He pursued a mastery orientation. We talked earlier about expertise. He pursued expertise. He pursued the knowledge in order to be able to exercise informed decisions. I'm not saying that he made all of the best decisions. We can criticize that time now. We are kind of far removed from it, but that that the decisions that he made were informed decisions because he had studied them. So you all have to, and we all have to, look at our learning goal orientations and our performance goal orientations and think about how they might relate to romantic relationships. You got people who just like to look like they are in a relationship, look smart, right? And then you got people who are interested in actually working through a relationship. They desire to learn for learning's sake. People often perform in romantic relationships. They perform what they think a romantic relationship should be instead of learning within that relationship. They do not invest. Performance is not investment. Resolving a difficult task opens the door to learning and development, because the more that you come across this particular problem, the more you learn and understand the problem, the more you begin to seek out and create solutions to resolve the problem. That's process. However, when a person crafts a lie instead of tell the truth, the person skips steps in the relationship development process. This does not build trust. It engenders anxiety, avoidance, and more procrastination. Then the offended partner will adopt a different goal orientation when there is suspicion that the other partner is lying. So in my case, I ended up pursuing a learning goal orientation with rebound relationships. At the end of the relationship, I was so tired. When I thought about the guy, I said, you know what? He looks like someone that I have been dealing with ever since I was younger. Why am I still in these same types of relationships? I keep picking the people who reject me, or picking the people who keep trashing me, picking the people who don't want me. Why do I keep doing that? And I said, when I kicked him out for the first time in 2014, I said, I'm going to learn about this stuff. I don't know what's wrong with me, what's going on. And that was the impetus for the Rebound Relationship books. Confessions of a Rebound Girl, because I wanted to understand. I had created one sort of long, lengthy paragraph, and then I said to myself, this looks like the beginning of a book. These individual points that I'm making here look like maybe the beginning of chapters. And so I reread that long, lengthy paragraph, and I started separating the content, adding subtitles, before I understood the title yet. And I began to type and type and type, and then it turned into a book, Bait, Hook, and Switch, Confessions of a Rebound Girl. And so I said, I got to learn about this stuff, because you know what? I'm so tired of this. I'm tired of these types of relationships. I'm not getting into anything else. I'm not going to do anything else anymore until I understand what's going on. And I said I was more interested in not looking smart anymore with romantic relationships and pursuing a learning goal orientation. And that's what you see now. You see the 3-part series, then you see this When They Marry Someone Else series. I have other audios I'm going to upload. I have the website. So now I care more about trying to learn about what's been going on with me, that I'm now making it sort of like a systematic thing, a system that I can now impart to others, so that if you are like struggling with something, like I said in that blog entry, begin to write from pain. Immediately start writing, immediately start journaling, journaling those ideas, because those ideas could eventually turn into a book. The people who perform in romantic relationships do so under the understanding that romantic relationships beyond the dating and courting phases do not need much work. They apply some of the understanding they have about completing tasks in a workplace setting, for example, to a romantic relationship. They look at the relationship as competing with their fellow colleagues. The following lists of survey items are standard for goal orientation research and assessment. They provide insight into how people think about goals, tasks, performance, and avoidance. So these are survey items I took from a journal article, and you would often see this if you were taking a survey. It would be much longer. I only took sort of 4 items from the survey, but with the learning goal orientation, and remember, learning goal orientation is you trying to become an expert, you trying to pursue a mastery orientation of a subject. With a performance goal orientation, you just want to look smart. You want to look like you know the information, but really don't know the information. So with LGO, I want to learn as much as possible. I like best when something I learn makes me want to find out more. When I fail to complete a difficult task, I plan to try harder the next time I work on it. I prefer to work on tasks that force me to learn new things. That means you are open to learning. And some people have been wounded in childhood. I remember in high school, I went to my first high school was, I'm not going to give you the name, but the high school, there was a Spanish teacher, and I tell this to all of my students, and it really bothers me even to this day, and that's why I try to make sure my teaching, what I teach students, is about work ethic and pursuing a learning goal orientation. So the Spanish teacher, old guy, old instructor, he had a desk at the front of the classroom, as all instructors do, and he told us to go get the book, the Spanish books, off the shelf in the classroom. And then he told us to turn to a certain page in a Spanish book, like a chapter or something. And then he told us to do the questions at the end of that chapter. And he said, if you need to know the answer, just look at the back of the book. And that has bothered me. I don't even know if I've truly made peace with it, but it is something that informs me in terms of how I teach my students. I do not teach my students that strategy. I make sure that I teach my students so that they almost, become teachers themselves. So we can all be wounded in our childhood, adolescence, in terms of learning, that if you look at that very last bullet point, I prefer to work on things that force me to learn new things. Well, if you come out of the public school system, not all public schools, but if you come out of the public school systems, it is all about check mark and gold star. You learn just enough to pass, but you're not really expected to learn to apply your knowledge, because the expectation for you in the public school system is to come out, get a good job, marry a good man, go to the military. I mean, college is really not something that you need to consider, right? Because you're basically working class. Now, the system is changing. We have dual credit systems, where teenagers are now taking college classes while they are in high school. And so I will say that the system is changing, but you can still have some teachers in that system, in the college system, who have a performance goal orientation, like look like they are a teacher, but not actually be a true teacher. So under performance goal orientation, PGO, I want others to think I'm smart. I am motivated by the thought of outperforming my peers. I strive to demonstrate my ability relative to others. The opinions of others about how well I do certain things are important to me. So people like the ideal of saying, I'm a teacher, they like it when people say, oh, you are a teacher. Oh, that's so noble. It's a noble profession. But I venture to say that there are some shady teachers, that there are some teachers that believe about certain people, and they can be white in a sort of working class, low class area. They can be, minority, Black, Latino, Asian, that they already have a belief system about you. And I've been noticing this, that they often they don't express it directly, but they express it in the way that they are teaching you. I don't feel like you are going to learn this, so there's no reason for me to teach you. That's what the Spanish teacher was essentially saying, that I don't feel like you're going to learn this Spanish, so there's no sense in me teaching you. He sat right up there at the desk. He did not teach. He never wrote anything on the board. In contrast, my teacher in geometry, she put everything on the board. She looked at it from line by line. The math instructor that I told you about in previous slides, she checked the students' work line by line. Anytime there was a line that was kind of off in its computation, she marked an X, right? That they are true teachers. That when you call them teacher, they are actually teachers. I'm like that. Because of my experiences, I am so concerned about how you learn, how you understand the information, and I don't want to leave you every semester not actually teaching you. So some people like to sort of just look like a teacher, but they're not really a teacher, or look like a businessman and they're not really a businessman. We're finding out now about Trump that he's not truly a businessman. And this is not to berate President Trump. But here it is. We thought all this time that the name Trump was, synonymous with business and leadership and excellence and intellectual and all that kinds of, and he's none of those things. That he is, when he says he is the king of debt, that means that he has no learning process when it comes to finances. And so now you see the different like states and Congress trying to get his finances right to see if he's compromised. And so he has a performance goal orientation. He looks like a president, but he's not a president. He looks like a businessman, but he's not a businessman. He looks like a financier, but he's not a financier. And so he's now 70 something years old, and he has rolled over in this misunderstanding about learning from the time he was young to 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and now 70s. That's too long to wait to learn. So he does not have a mastery orientation really of even the real estate industry, that he stopped building a long time ago, that he started licensing his name Trump. And I'm not saying that's a bad business deal, but he's not a builder. And he's saying that he is a builder is him essentially saying I look smart. But all he did was license his name, and the construction company was the company that actually built the buildings. Any sort of construction project that had the name Trump. It is more important for him to look smart, or for some people it is more important for them to look like they are in a relationship, but they actually won't be in a relationship. And I'll say this last thing before I go on to the slide. Kourtney Kardashian and then Scott Disick, they have this habit of looking like they are in a relationship, but they're not in relationship, right? If you look at some of the earlier seasons of them living together in one home, that on the cameras they look like they were in relationship, but in real life they lived and slept in separate bedrooms. And it was at Kourtney's instruction to do so. So they look like they are in relationship, and anytime it looks like he's going to get someone else and have another relationship with someone else, she gets on the Twitter and the Facebook and the Instagram, all that kind of stuff, and she and all of her sisters began to berate Scott, and then they end up pulling him back into the fold, and then it'll go good for a while, and then after that they will look like they are a relationship. It's just monkeyness. But if you could take anything from that, from this learning goal orientation and performance goal orientation, that it is important for you to develop a mastery orientation of the thing that you want to become become a master of something, become a student of something that you want to master. I study teaching because I want to master teaching. I tell students all the time, and I tell people all the time, I'm a better teacher than I am a writer, even though I write well. But I may not necessarily be a wordsmith. However, there are some people who just write extremely well. But I don't necessarily study writing. I study teaching because that is my gift. My talent might be writing, but the teaching is actually a divine gift. So I make sure that I cultivate it and I do well by it more than even so my writing, even though I care about what I put on the paper. Romantic relationships need work, but people often embrace short-term solutions such as adopting a dating rotation, going back to an ex-partner, having multiple partners, and marrying someone else. That's key because in my previous relationship, the partner that he kept going back and forth with, she didn't want him. She would tell me that she didn't want him. He would tell me that she didn't want her, but she really did not want him. And it would have been better for him to stay and work things out with me, knowing that I actually wanted him and knowing that it would have been a more peaceful environment. No, he needed the chaos. And they are not together today. He's not even with the person that he also cheated on me with. He's with somebody completely different. And so now he's at an age where he has no other choice but to work things out, because the consequence of cheating would be kicking him out at his age. And it's not a good idea to be kicked out at that particular age. The third goal orientation in the research is avoid. It is reflected in the following statements. The things that I enjoy most are the things I do best. I prefer to do things that I can do well rather than things that I do poorly. I prefer to avoid situations in which I might perform poorly. Now that's academic, but you can look at that in terms of relationships, that some people don't want to get into marriages because they saw their parents divorced, and they feel that divorce might be part of their lifespan, right? And so they will stay with the person for like 20, 25 years, but never marry them. And I think that is just strange to me. But, people do what they want, right? They have the free will in order to pursue whatever they want. But you base your initial belief system about failing at marriage if you got married, but then you ended up with the person for 25 years. I don't know. God bless me. God bless him. I don't get it. It is the third statement that has some resonance to why people choose short-term relationships over long-term relationships. Even the person who marries someone else might still have a performance goal orientation, because once the person marries their partner, there is no need to continue learning and development. The person is married, he or she has won. So even if you believe that marriage is necessary for you, you still have to get beyond the I do's, as I noted in previous slides, that it can't be just about immediate gratification. Like I said, you got people who like to look like they're married, right? You got the ladies in the church, and they'll go up there with their husbands and everything, and they look like they're married. But that same husband on the weekends will be spending time with his mistress, or the woman, the wife, acting like she's married, but then come home and talk down to her husband, mock him, be sarcastic, maybe put her hands on him, right? So you got a lot of people with a performance goal orientation in terms of marriage. This means that even if you were not a suitable partner for the person who married someone, you are more likely to learn from the situation than the one who decided to marry someone else. You get to reflect on your capacity to address and resolve problems, which is significant for moving forward into a better relationship. Remember when I talked about replaceability in a previous audio? That it may be better for you to be replaceable, because then if you pursue replaceability instead of trying to become irreplaceable for your partner and wearing your mind and heart out, that if you pursue replaceability, you can save your mind, you can save your heart, you can save your body, you can save your finances, you can save your spirituality, and you can learn from that relationship. If you continue to pursue irreplaceability long term, you're going to be doing that forever. What if he never decides to change? What if she never decides to change? She left you when you didn't have any money, right? If you remember that movie with Common and Queen Latifah, I think it was Just Right. Okay, The Paula Patton character, she decides to leave Common, his character, when he breaks his leg and he needs help. See, she looks at him as a hero and a savior for her financially. And when it looked like he was not going to be able, or he was struggling, to get back and rehab, she left him. But then Queen Latifah comes in and she rehabs, helps him, gets him better, coaches him, encourages him, and then he's able to win the game, right? The game that he was struggling in at first, and then he was able to win. Well, not too long after that, the girl who left him came back. She came back because she wanted to be back in that excitement of winning. So she didn't really love him. She wanted the relationship to look like she's in a loving relationship, right? She even says as much. So sometimes it may be better that you are replaceable, so that there is a better person out there for you. It was a lot better for me to go on ahead and let him go, let my ex go, because had I stayed with him, I probably would have been in jail. I probably would have been in a mental hospital. I would have lost my job. He would have been truly the ruin of me. And I didn't realize I was in that much danger. Relationship building is a normative standard. It is part of the larger lifespan development that people experience from childhood to adulthood. Relationship building is ecological, multidimensional, multidirectional, social, cultural, psychological, emotional, and cognitive. It is part of the fabric of human development. Jumping in and out of romantic relationships opposes these norms. So short-term relationships blind us to human capacity to build and sustain hearts and life for the long term. Even a person who marries someone else might do so, but for the short term. If the person did not learn anything from the previous relationship, and he or she does not build the capacity for learning, then it is more likely that the person will not learn anything in the new relationship. And this is what I'm going to end on. That they may not be lifelong learners. It is likely the reason they married someone else. That staying in relationship with you would require learning. That getting beyond immediate gratification in marriage requires learning. And that's why I made this video a lot longer than the other videos, because even if you don't want to enter a romantic relationship, you can still use the fixed mindset, the growth mindset, the learning goal orientation, the performance goal orientation information, and you can understand the expertise, right, development of the knowledge base, right, for early adulthood, late adulthood, elderly, right, and it's all of that sort of comes to an understanding about lifelong learning, that the norm is to learn. And when you procrastinate, that is your counter argument to learning, that you are procrastinating the learning process. That's what that means in terms of avoiding. So the reason why they might have married someone else, it could be as simply as they may not be lifelong learners. All right, so hopefully you were able to gain insight from this video discussion. Please like, subscribe, and visit. So please like the video, hit the notification bell for more discussions. I am re-uploading all of my audios, so I needed to make some changes to them. You can visit my website for more content at reginayfavors.com. If you want to send me an email, you can send an email reginayfavors@yahoo.com. Please also purchase the book. It's going to come out in spring 2021. So I had to make changes to my book to update it, and I also updated the title. So the original title was Bait, Hook, and Switch. Confessions of a Rebound Girl, and I have updated the title to Toxic Encounters, Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships. So right now I'm still basically editing it, and I want to make it available in spring 2021. So thank you very much for visiting my channel, and I am Regina Y. Favors. Have a great day.